I'm gonna assume no and move into our action items. Action item, so 3A is a public hearing for the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant, West Feeder Main Phase 3 easement acquisition.
Andrew, I might give just a little background before we open the public hearing so that we all know why we're here. And as the board will recall, in this project, West Feeder Main Phase 3 has been bid and awarded for just over 2 miles of transmission main associated with the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant expansion. At the February board meeting, the board did award the contract to S.J. Lewis Construction. They're preparing to start the project. We need 16 easements to construct the project. 12 of those easements are either in hand or nearing completion. And we're still working with the other property owners. We have a consultant who's working on that with us. At this point, we don't anticipate that we're going to need to use eminent domain to acquire any of those easements, but this is the point in time where we need to have a public hearing and authorize the use if necessary so that we can move forward with the project on schedule. So that's kind of why we're here, what we're talking about. And so I think it'd be appropriate now to open the public hearing for you.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for comments from the public regarding the authorization of necessary property interests through eminent domain. And with that, do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak on this topic? If so, we'll ask you to go to the podium and state your name and address.
Not aware that we've received any written or verbal comments outside of the meeting.
Is there anybody online? All right. If we don't have anyone who would like to speak on this, I would like a motion to close the public hearing and authorize staff to report that a public meeting was held.
So moved. Second.
And what is the,
If I might offer to that suggestion.
Sure.
That motion. I think that the public hearing can be closed without an action of the board, but we do need an action of the board to adopt a resolution authorizing the use of eminent domain by the utility if necessary. And there is an actual resolution that was mailed to property owners as part of a legally required notice. And so that will actually be executed, assuming the board adopts the resolution by the board chair after the board votes. So the resolution is just to authorize use of eminent domain, should that become necessary for the project.
And that would not come back to the board again.
That would be correct. You've authorized at that point the use of eminent domain. And so those proceedings could be commenced, although I assume you'd be alerted to the fact that you've been unsuccessful in obtaining those easements.
And remind me of the timing. So if we approve this, when would people take action? When this,
There's a required good faith negotiation period, and that's the requirement is good faith. So there's not an exact amount of time that needs to occur, although I believe these negotiations have been going on for several months already, so the engineering department can comment on that since at least last fall.
John, can you comment on when that started?
Commonly, you will see 6 months is spent on trying to negotiate voluntary easements.
so that good faith doesn't start from this point of having this public hearing?
Correct. It's not like a statute of limitations or something. It starts with a specific date. It's sort of an equitable consideration, what efforts have been expended. So you would, by authorizing the use of eminent domain today, would authorize action by the utility if it's necessary in order to obtain the easements, but
are you recommending that the resolution have a timetable involved? I mean, this is just open-ended. Could happen anytime into the future.
yes, yeah, no, there's not, it's not gonna expire. But I don't believe the plan of utility is to commence any proceedings imminently. In fact, I think the summary here indicates making progress.
Looks like there's only 4 left.
Yeah, I mean, Diane, you have more experience with this. Maybe I'll ask you. I mean, is there any reason why we should consider saying that this authorization expires on a certain date, give the utility 6 months or something?
I know that this project is on a timetable, and I think that's what drives completion of this rather than needing a deadline. They need to get going on
You've
this
never
and they know
seen
that.
that done necessarily. I've just never done
Yeah,
it before, so I just want to ask.
Think so.
The other practical limitation is there was a form of resolution approving the use of eminent domain that was mailed to the property owners as part of the notice required. So if we're gonna make an amendment to the resolution authorizing the use of eminent domain, I think there would be a question about whether we would need to
So we've sent the resolution.
we have sent the resolution to the property owners. So
Okay,
Is this the way we usually do it, Jim?
this is the way it is usually done. Outside, not just us, this is by the code. We haven't, I think the Waterworks, it's been a while since you've actually gone through this process because you haven't.
It's probably been over 10 years.
Yeah.
Since we've done this. Usually when we're only doing transmission projects, where we're getting a lot of easements. We have been on a big transmission project for many years.
Most of the time you're operating within an existing right of way, existing infrastructure, you've already acquired the necessary access.
And it's my understanding that just because we adopt this resolution or pass this resolution, doesn't mean that we will have to use eminent domain. That, like you said, negotiations can still continue, conversations can still be had. It's not saying that we will, it's just giving the tool.
That's correct. Yes. And I still think they're, yes.
I can add what they, to schedule the hearing can sometimes take months out to get a hearing scheduled. So it's not uncommon to schedule the hearing, and continue negotiations. I've seen negotiations settled the day before the hearing. So it never has to go to the hearing. But scheduling the hearing in advance, it's not uncommon just to get it on the calendar. Take months. That's-
But I would say it's our interest to have this move
The clock.
along. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, I just, eminent domain in itself always has.
Yeah.
Feelings, and not so good feelings, so I wanna, and I don't think it is our intention to, want to use that, and so if we can continue to work in earnest to reach some sort of agreement or use what we can to continue those conversations, that's ideal over having to, actually execute any type of eminent domain.
Andrea, if I could just add to that, because you're right, the term eminent domain, there's a very negative connotation. But as part of those negotiations, and even if we do move into eminent domain, it's my understanding there is payment, significant payment made to the owner of the property. We also return the property as far as any area that's been dug up. Ted, you could probably explain it better than I could, but if anyone is listening in, I just want to make sure it's not that we just move in and take over the property. There is a significant cost that we pay in order to have that ability to do what we need to do for this expansion.
There's a fair market component. Fair market value component, even within eminent domain, but we're trying to negotiate with the property owners ahead of that. And resolve their concerns. This is just a case, if we get to the point where we come to impasse and we can't negotiate. We don't want to hold the project up because of the costs associated with holding the project up. Once the contractor starts and the materials are here and the equipment's here, we're missing one easement. And we can't get through that spot. We have to stop. There can be significant cost, and the delay is problematic, and we need the capacity, or we would be building the facilities. But it's always our intent to negotiate through all these. 12 of the 16 are done. We're still working on the others. I think we'll get there. But if we don't, we don't want to start this 4-month process 4 months from now. And
Sure.
4 months behind.
I know that Graham asked the question that these don't have to come back to us if you do choose to get to that point. But, and I know you will, but, I just ask that you keep, me updated on how things are progressing and, where we get to those points, like those things need to be done.
Absolutely will, Andrea, but just to ensure clarity, you're not talking about bringing it back to a subsequent board meeting to report that. You're talking about just keeping the board informed as the process goes on.
Yes, that's what I am suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need a motion to for the resolution approving the acquisition of property interest by eminent domain for the public improvement.
Yes.
Correct? I so move.
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
I,
And I believe the minutes will reflect that the public hearing is closed.
Yes.
By the motion.
Moving on to item 3B. Request authorization to, actually, I need to stop and apologize for rushing in here and just jumping straight into the meeting. I did want to take a minute though to point out the great collaboration with the city and Congressman Nunn's office and Des Moines Waterworks the other week, and in having Congressman Nunn make his announcement of the bill that he is co-sponsored. And I also want to shine a light on Amy and the fantastic job she did in representing Des Moines Waterworks during that press conference, not only with her prepared statement, but also being able to quickly and very eloquently answer the questions that were asked during that time. And I think that was a great opportunity to bring Des Moines Waterworks to a more positive light in the work we're doing to try to provide assistance in that lead pipe replacement program. And to reach out to the community and be a part of that effort. I know Sue was there. If you have anything else you'd like to add.
It was a great event and, shout out also to Melissa. I know she worked with the homeowner. It was a very feel-good moment for Des Moines Public Schools. Congressman Nunn kept stressing that this is a bipartisan bill. It's nice when we don't have partisan issues that we know that we have everyone trying to work together, but Amy then not only represented us that day, but then I also saw her on the news that evening with a very nice spot talking about what it's doing, and we're wanting to get the word out. So, and Andrea, you did a great job too.
Standing there, saying nothing. Thank you. Okay, I apologize for that liberty and jumping back. It's been a bit of a day, but fast forwarding to item 3B, the request authorization to issue a PO for a new distribution crew van.
Andrea, pretty straightforward item here. Today, 3B, we have one of our crew vans has reached the end of its useful life. We want to replace that van. This is a budgeted item. It is a long lead time item too. We're here simply to request authorization to issue a purchase order in the amount of $128,000 for purchase of the van.
So I need a resolution, a motion to authorize staff to issue a purchase order to Truck Center Companies in the amount of $128,576 for a new distribution crew van. Any discussion on this?
I just wanted to ask it. Just out of curiosity, what kind of trade-in did we get on that? The
Nathan, do you have a sense of the trade-in?
value?
The unit we're trading in is a 20-year-old crew van. that
I
has,
know, but if somebody who's
30,000 hours on it.
trucks.
But we'll have to follow up, Diane. I don't know what the trading value is.
Any other questions or? Okay. With then, I will call for a vote. All in favor, when all in favor with the motion on the floor, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Moving on to item 3C is to request authorization to issue a purchase order for Fluor Drive Water Treatment Plant high service pump variable frequency drive.
Andrea, a little more background on this item. Back in July of 2022, the board authorized a professional services agreement with HDR Engineering to investigate the possibility of adding a variable frequency drive to one of our existing high service pumps at the Fluor Drive treatment plant. The analysis indicated that placing a VFD on one of our biggest pumps, one of our 30 million gallon per day pumps in West Highlift, would offer us the most operational flexibility. The integration of a VFD on that pump will allow for a lot of flexibility in operations of the treatment plant. It will also eliminate a number of pump changes that can result in pressure fluctuations and even cause some water main breaks. And so given that the analysis indicated that that was a possibility and that would work, we're very interested in doing that. Now, those pumps, those 30 MGD pumps have 2,000 horsepower, medium voltage DC brushless motors, and that's a fairly specific motor configuration, especially from a VFD supplier's perspective. There's a lot to consider there. The team actually reached out to all of the manufacturers that they were aware of that manufacture VFDs for motors that size. 3 of those suppliers, I believe it was 5 suppliers in total, 3 of the suppliers indicated that they would not be able to provide a VFD that would operate properly with that motor configuration. They would have to replace the motor, which is a significant additional expense. But two of the suppliers, Eaton and Allen Bradley, both said that they could do it. They could provide a variable frequency drive that would work with 2,000 horsepower medium voltage DC brushless motor. So engineering and water production have evaluated those two options. Water production has been for many years working towards standardizing on Allen Bradley drives. Well, for a lot of reasons that are listed here. It creates programming benefits, maintenance familiarity, reduces spare parts inventory. There are a lot of reasons why standardizing on a specific manufacturer is a good idea. We have a lot of Allen Bradley drives around the utility, including one of the similar size and type, this ProFlex 7000 on one of our Des Moines River pumps up on Prospect Avenue there, where we take water out of the Des Moines River. That one has been there for a number of years. It's worked very reliably. The cost analysis indicated that the Allen Bradley drive could be acquired for equal or even lesser cost. And so we're here today to request authorization to issue a purchase order, but we're also here, I want to make it clear that we're asking for permission to sole source this drive from Allen Bradley, given the information. And there is a sole source justification memo behind the memo, where Nathan has gone through all that detail and kind of shared why we think it's the appropriate thing to move forward with the Allen Bradley PowerFlex 7000 series variable frequency drive. So with that background, Andrea, I'll let you get the motions and then we'll see if there's any
Sure.
questions.
So need a motion to authorize staff to issue a purchase order to Van Meter Inc. in the amount of $516,898 for the Fleur Drive Water Treatment Plant High Service Pump Variable Frequency Drive.
So move.
Second.
So with that, there was a lot of information there that you shared, Ted. Does anybody have any additional questions or comments?
For my understanding, so when we say this, basically we're is this a term rather than RFPing it or something like that? 'Cause I mean, ultimately, we would select a single provider for this piece of equipment. Right?
We would, usually what we would do for a piece of equipment is we would request bids. And they would give us bids and we would typically take the lowest bid, all things being equal. I think what we're proposing here is that all things aren't. Three of the manufacturers could provide the drive. The two that could, good manufacturers, but we've standardized on one of them. We feel the price that we've gotten is competitive, comparable to what it would be from Eaton. We would prefer, for the reasons listed, to go with the price that we got from Allen Bradley, instead of getting prices and picking the lowest one. We've evaluated all of the available drives and believe this is the best choice, and we're asking for permission to purchase this specific piece of equipment.
So the sole source justification is for our behalf, not necessarily something that is required.
Well, we have the ability to do things that we believe are in the best interest of Waterworks, John.
This is not a public project under chapter 26, because it's a piece of equipment. And so then it really comes to the board and how it wants to exercise its discretion over expenditure of funds and utility. Staff have provided their justification for why they believe this is the best approach for utility to take. The board needs to make that decision before it expends the funds.
Did have a question in here, about our existing PowerFlex 7000 has run for many years.
Mhm.
Can you give me a sense of how many years is?
Boy, for my time. It's not that much. Yeah, that's probably.
Any other questions or comments? With that, we have a motion to authorize staff. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item 3D, acceptance of McMullen High Service Pump Building HVAC and roofing upgrades.
Andrea, this was a project that came to the board in February of 2023. We awarded a project to Brockway Mechanical and Roofing to install a new larger air conditioning unit for the electrical room at the McMullen Water Treatment Plant. We also replaced the roof on that section of the building. All of the work now is done. There was one change order in the amount of $6,950 on the project. And that change order was to switch brands of air conditioning unit, and Lindsay tells me that determined that that particular unit would be more energy efficient and have a lower life cycle cost over time. So we decided we would make that change up at the onset of the project. We have updated the technical committee, the Central Iowa Waterworks Technical Committee on this project and what's been done. And we're here today asking permission to accept that work completed at McMullen.
So I need a motion to do just that, to accept the McMullen High Service Pump Building HVAC and Roofing Upgrades Contract completed by Brockway Mechanical and Roofing Company in the amount of $240,044.
So
Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item 3E, request authorization to solicit bids for the 2024 PCPS Aquifer Storage and Recovery Well Bid Package 1, well construction, and establish the date of public hearing as the date of the April 2024 board meeting.
Andrea, at the December board meeting in 2022, the board authorized a professional services agreement with Stranding Incorporated for design and construction services on a new ASR well that we are going to install on the site adjacent to the Polk County Pumping Station, which is located on Northeast 14th Street, up kind of near where Polk County Public Works is, north of Interstate 35. This is the first contract as part of that entire project. This is the contract to drill the well, basically. This is an ASR well that we are going to own as one. So this is a well that we will use to provide us capacity under the regional model to help us with our peak, as opposed to the other ASRs that we operate, which are actually regional facilities that are being transferred to Central Iowa Waterworks. This one will be ours and will help us manage our peak usage. Preparation of plans and specs are nearing completion. The engineer's estimate for this first contract is just over $4 million. And staff is recommending that the board authorize us to solicit bids for this first contract on the ASR project.
So I need a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids 2024 PCPS Aquifer Storage and Recovery Well Bid Package 1 well construction, and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the April 2024 board meeting, and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law.
Second.
So from start to finish, and once you have approval through the public board meeting, how quickly would this ASR well be constructed?
Be at least a year. Then we have to do cycle testing. How long?
3 years.
3 years.
Before we're gonna actually be able to cover.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just have a quick question. So we started this in 2022. And it was determined in the whole process that this would be ours. If a community wanted to, now that we're regional, we're going to have a regional model, wanted to do an ASR, what kind of process for their community as opposed to what kind of process would they have to go through?
You know, there's a process outlined in the agreement actually for communities, that they have to have the technical committee review their proposal or their plan, their request. Most importantly, I think we have to ensure that we have enough wintertime capacity to fill the ASR. We're approaching the point, or maybe we're at the point where we have enough ASRs in the system that until we expand treatment capacity, specifically winter capacity, we don't have room for any more. So that's pretty well spelled out in the 2080 agreement, Central Iowa Waterworks agreement. But once we add treatment capacity, then a community can bring a request for an aquifer storage and recovery well to the technical committee. They'll evaluate it to see if it meets the requirements, and then they will authorize it, but they'll have to basically have permission to do it in the regional model. Timothy, add anything to that?
Any other questions? We have a motion on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3F is to award the 2024 through 2029 master service agreement for construction inspection services.
The board is now familiar with these master service agreements. We've done many of them for many different disciplines. This one specifically is for construction services, basically inspection of construction that's ongoing in the system. We reached out to qualified consultants, asked for proposals. 10 proposals were received. In February, you can see the list of companies that gave us proposals. Staff has reviewed the proposals based upon their project team, their experience, staff resources, approach and fees. And staff is recommending that we execute 5-year master service agreements with 3 companies, IMEG, McClure, and B&K for construction inspection services as needed over the next 5 years.
So we need to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute a 5-year master service agreement with IMEG, McClure, and V&K for construction inspection services.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? This is one of our new master service, not a renew of a master service agreement. No other questions? Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3G is to request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement with SVPA Architects, Inc. for the Floor Drive Treatment Plant Distribution Building Improvements.
Andrea, the board will recall that in August of 2023, we executed a professional services agreement with SVPA for conducting a schematic design of what we could do with the distribution building. We had an upper level garage in that building. We had a ramp that went up to the garage, salt, sand and whatnot, primarily from winter driving, and that material migrating up the ramp and into the garage had caused some issues. The ramp is in need of replacement. It's actually leaking into the space below. And so it was determined that we would have an evaluation done of what we might be able to do in that area with the garage space, with the space under the ramp, and some adjacent space. And so the schematic design process is complete. They've developed some options that the team has identified what they think is the best option. And the next step in the design process would be to pursue design development and construction documents for construction of a building improvement there to resolve the issues with the ramp and the leaking, to take advantage of that space that we're no longer going to use for parking, and then also to take advantage of some space while we're there SBPA has presented us a proposal to do a amendment to their PSA to provide those design, development, and construction documents at a cost not to exceed $189,560. Staff supports that amendment. The actual construction of those improvements will be kind of slotted into this 5-year CIP as appropriate, with priority likely being given to repair of the ramp and some of the work in the space that has been vacated by moving the parking out. And then likely in a later phase, do some of the other work that is proposed. But of course, all of those projects would come back to the board for approval before they award. But at this time, we're just seeking authorization to execute the amendment to their professional services agreement to do that.
Thank you. So we need a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 in the amount of $189,560 to the professional service agreement with SVPA Architects, Inc. for Flora Drive Treatment Plant Distribution Building Improvements.
Second,
Questions?
I have a question. What are we gonna use that building for? Reading this, you said we're not gonna use it for parking or,
We're not, but the existing space that's up there where the parking is likely going to become offices and conference room kind of space. We're just busting at the seams down there as we grow or we're out of space. There's also a need for some amount of storage. That area under the ramp right now that leaks is where our field crews, specifically the pipelines crews, bring their muddy clothes and boots and things and hang them up to dry, which is problematic because it leaks. So if they hang them up there when it's raining, they get wetter than they were. And then the team did some good work here in that they recognize that we're going to be doing some pretty significant work to take a ramp out and probably put a roof on there. We have some needs, especially associated with the field customer service team. That's largely what got moved out of the second floor parking. They used to do a lot of the loading their equipment, their MTUs, their meters, the things that they use every day. They would load them in their vehicles while they were there in the garage because they had access to the elevator from downstairs. And they could bring that stuff up and load it right in their vehicles. Well, now they park in an outdoor parking lot across the complex from where all the things are stored. And so there's been some creative use of that space to allow them to have a little bit of a drive-through opportunity so they can drive through, be adjacent to stores, bring things out and load them and some other things. And I don't know if I missed anything significant. Lindsay, you're aware of what's going on there. Jenny's not here. She's on.
Yeah, really will be some efficient. Mention the offices upstairs are all the area as well, so another room as well. But we have kind of a layout, but it's schematic, so we'll be working through the details. But yeah, definitely, we've included distribution, customer service, drive up and all of the. Happy to do that for you.
We have a motion? No. Yes, we have a motion. Any other questions? All right, all in favor, to the motion on the table, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right, that I believe gets us through all of our action items. And that moves us into our information items. The first item we have is board committee reports, starting with Finance and Audit Committee.
We had, and I brought the wrong notebook, but I believe this month last one was the AI presentation, correct? Yeah, I was trying to track myself. So Pat, I had presented a kind of I guess it's a little out of the box topic for finance and audit, but spices it up, I guess. The state of artificial intelligence, what that could mean It was really interesting and informative. It's an area I follow a little bit. I think the biggest thing from a board perspective is just knowing that there's a lot of technological changes that are coming. I think, and it can fall, the way I looked at it was like fall into different buckets. Some of this could be on the operational side of better models that could do preventative maintenance, things like that, and basically predict some of that stuff a lot better than what we currently can do. There's also generative tools that could be used by our staff to create reports or research and quickly surmise what is out there on the internet. As you've probably seen ChatGPT and everything. And then there's probably also a bucket that is our more consumer facing lens that could be, think of like chatbots or artificial voices that handle calls and stuff like that. All stuff that's coming down the road various times. I think it's just a matter of what the specific implementation is. Pat, you talked a little bit about recommendations around having some policies, which I think would be good to start exploring. I think it will be difficult because this is a wide range. It's like the next thing of the internet. It's like, what's the policy for the internet? Well, it's hard. It's a massive thing. So, but it's good to talk about it now because changes will continue to come as technology marches on.
Planning committee.
We had a great meeting. Melissa Walker shared the How to Tell Our Story 2024, what we've been doing in communications. I think Melissa will never ask to present again because we gave her lots of other things we wanted her to do. Someone in the group said that's what happens when you do a good job. You're asked to do more. But I'm going to put Graham on the spot because one of the things that came out of this that I thought was an excellent recommendation from the board. We're going to have some resources available to us when we've regionalized. We're going to be able to upgrade some of our infrastructure, which is great for the citizens. And Graham, does that give you enough to share the idea that you mentioned?
Yeah, I thought, what we should begin to think about is how do we tell that story? We have this influx of funds that are incoming in, and so far the board has talked about using the vast majority of all of this funds to upgrade our infrastructure and distribution. And so I think we should tell that story. I think that it's a good story to tell not only for our ratepayers, but for our regional partners as well, of how this money is being used. And so, again, I'll leave it for the team to come up with, but my idea is, everything from as we develop the plan, that we have a communications plan for that, to the simple things that when we get out and we're actually in the ground and replacing old pipes, that we have some signage that says these dollars are a result of regionalization to promote that. And as I say, I think it really is, our audience is many, but two real groups, and that is Des Moines Waterworks ratepayers, but also for our partners in regionalization for them to understand how we're using this money in Des Moines, which yes, benefits Des Moines ratepayers, but it also benefits the system. And so my idea was, let's be smart about telling that story and start that now.
I think that makes a lot of sense because, to your point, we do have those resources coming in, and there's been, conversations circling around those resources and how they'll be used and what that looks like and what it means. And, we've done our best over the course of the regionalization negotiations trying to explain that. But now you have that tangible thing as we move forward to point to and use to explain it. That makes a lot of sense.
And do it in bite-sized pieces, right? I mean, so that it's understandable. I mean, if we're going to use some money that's going to speed up a project that we wouldn't have gotten to for the next 15 years, but now we're able to get it to it now. That's something I think we can all understand. I mean, we all pay our own homeowners budgets and that sort of thing. And if we could speed up a project like that, it makes sense. Plus, it gets it into bite-sized pieces.
Great.
So I thought that was a great suggestion. Thank you very much. Kyle gave a presentation, showed us some additional photos of the grass fires that took place in the park. That, we all heard about at the last meeting. And a little bit of the challenges we have with Mid-American being able to get back there and others because of the railroad tracks. So that was a nice job. Thank you very much. Also under planning, Andrea and Ted and I have had conversations. One of the nice things about regionalization and this additional governance, so many more people are going to be interested in water. And I will be moving on to the Central Iowa Waterworks Board and leaving this board at some point. The mayor would love to be able to appoint some of her new people. So between now and the first of the year, that will happen. But as the vice chair, I wanted to bring that forward because I believe we need to have an election. And many times we've used our vice chair to move into the chair position, which won't be happening. And that's always a vote that the board takes. But I think it'd be a good idea, maybe at the next board meeting, if I would step down as the vice chair, we would have an election for the new vice chair. We have the plan for succession.
Boy, that's a, yeah, but no, I appreciate you sharing that, Sue. That is something that we have been discussing as, you know, the regionalization takes shape. How do we continue to strengthen our bench here on the board and make sure that we're giving folks the, you know, especially the next vice chair, some time to, yeah, dive into everything that we've been working on this year. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And that's it. From planning.
All right, well, next on the agenda would be the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden Board.
I don't have much to share on that, and I think I mentioned it before, they're beginning a capital campaign to do a new phase of the park, which is very exciting. So look for more information on that coming soon.
Is that moving up?
So it'd be up toward the freeway there, up
Yeah.
toward, you know, University.
Have some things done.
They have done some, they've moved that way a little
Yeah.
bit. There's the Ruan Garden and
Yeah.
that new sculpture in honor of Timer, which I think is really beautiful. So look a little bit past that to fill that space in. I mean, there's real opportunity for learning in that area.
Well, the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation Board, will take a stab and then let Pat and Mike fill in. The highlights of this past month's meeting, really, I thought revolved around their effort and just, in discussions around their effort to look to hiring an official director for the Park Foundation and what options they might have in doing so, how that, whether they, you know, work with a third party to bring somebody online or some other alternative. They're also launching into their, you know, spring, summer season with concerts being announced, beer garden popping up every now and then, and maybe when we get done with second or third winter, more permanently. This in April, before our next meeting, there will be the Earth Day celebration where they have the very popular Earth Day extravaganza with the glass eggs being hidden throughout the park. And then I will share also that as an ongoing item that the Park Foundation continues to look at how they can continue to grow to a more sustainable place with analyzing events throughout this year and really trying to focus and see where their revenue is coming, how to leverage that, where their expenses are going, how to minimize those, and move into the next phase as an organization, not necessarily the next phase of construction.
Andre, I have a question, and I don't expect you to have the answer to it, but I was curious as I was looking at the actual budget versus the budget. And it looked like, and this is a long spreadsheet, but it looked like there had to be some building maintenance that had not been budgeted for. It was 176,000. I was just curious if that was damaged or read right, or if we knew what that was.
So with
And I'm not saying there was damage or it just seemed like.
there
that
was,
a big-
oh, so there was damage during an event.
Okay.
That was related actually to the Trump rally and the semis. I don't know if that landed in building maintenance. And then there was also the addition of a screen that was added to the amphitheater for the larger concerts of Willie Nelson and I think there was another band that required the screen that I can't think of right now. And that might also be where that landed. But I can double check to make 100% sure.
Like that is sod damage.
It's a sod damage.
So they will be reimbursed for that, though, won't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so that will probably show up under revenue in another line item. Thank you.
Pat, do you have anything that you want to add from the meeting?
No, I actually wasn't there. I was out of town on that day. So I think you covered everything unless Mike has something he wants to add.
Optimism around the show. They've got some calendar schedule, the early ticket sales are indicating audiences at that level that where they need to be. So
I believe that brings us to the CEO and general manager comments.
Andrea, a couple of things today. It rained, which is positive. We've been looking for that. We've seen some water levels in the river here already that we haven't seen for some amount of time. We're also now starting to watch nitrate concentrations. There's some indication that upstream they're pretty high. Not yet here. They're not significantly high here, but that's something that we will certainly be keeping an eye on here in the not too distant future to make sure we're prepared for that if we see higher nitrates. I will point out that there's going to be a third, I think probably final before the board meeting, but a third Central Iowa Waterworks planning session on April 3rd. To just make sure that we're moving in the direction of being prepared for that first board meeting, which is on the 24th of April. So work continues there. Quite an agenda has been assembled and a lot of work yet to do to get that ready. Speaking of that, on April 9th, at our planning committee meeting, we are going to talk about trustee roles and responsibilities. Want to make sure that we have a handle on that before that first board meeting. But then the plan would be to take those roles and responsibilities to our April board meeting. We're going to plan to incorporate those into the board policy so that everyone is clear on what's going on there.
I'll just add that I would encourage everyone that is able to attend that meeting to attend, because that will give us the opportunity to really have a more robust conversation about those and make sure that we're on the right path.
Just say that I'm gonna be out of the country for that meeting. But
Enjoy your.
yes,
Sounds like a great trip.
Which meeting?
the planning meeting.
Oh,
You've seen them.
I've seen.
Can I move on to safety?
I suppose.
I suppose. I do want to bring the board's attention to the agenda where it shows that we thus far in the year have had 0 recordable injuries, which is a very positive thing. We're pleased that we're a quarter of the way through the year with 0 recordable injuries. We hope that continues certainly. And then in the safety update this week or this month, we got a couple of topics there. Illinois does a nice job of providing us some kind of interesting information, and he's talking in the first bullet there about our leading indicators. You know, we've talked a lot about near misses and trying to encourage folks to submit those, and we've tracked them and we're trying to resolve them. This year, we're also focusing on static inspections and job site observations, and that's off to a little bit of a slow start, I will admit. Not necessarily surprising that people aren't jumping on that bandwagon, but we're going to continue to work on that and promote the value of all 3 of those types of leading indicators to help us improve our safety situation, our safety culture. And then there's also a chart here that shows the safety training topics that have been presented in the first quarter of the year. And it's a large number, you know, over 1,000, and those are not 1,000 different topics or 1,000 training initiatives. It's individuals at a training. So if you have a training where there are 25 people, that counts as 25. Okay, but we're over well over 1,000 there. If you count the online trainings, we're approaching 2,000. And then there's also 109 trainings that haven't been completed. And I think you might think that that looks bad, but that actually is a good thing because we know they haven't been. And so now that we're tracking more actively, we have the ability to go back to those 109 trainings and say, hey, we missed this. These are mostly online trainings. You haven't had the opportunity to complete that training, we make sure you get that done so that everybody is getting their training. So that's actually a good thing. Now, hopefully that number won't get bigger and bigger. We will manage it, but the point there is that we know that there have been a few folks who have missed a few trainings, and we can focus on that and make sure they get it done.
So I just have a question. Are those trainings tied into performance reviews? The
You know,
expectations?
Doug, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we have updated our safety definitions, competencies in our process.
For employees and for supervisors.
Anything else on safety or general comments? Our last item, an information item is D, the contract status and professional service agreements. In particular, the 2023 Des Moines hydrant relocations phase 2.
Yeah, and that was a competitive quote, right, Michael, that we got 3 quotes on that, and the total was, the low bid was in the $30,000 range. Just making the board aware that that was handled that way.
Well, thank you for that. If nothing else, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Okay.